You're listening to The Rewind.
Mzansi Recap.
Okay, welcome back to Mzansi Recap. Right now, we're getting into the deep dive, and today's topic is a topic that I've been meaning for us to get into, Punta, all the time. When we spoke about topics, this is one topic that I've been meaning for us to unpack, and we're not going to be doing it on our own. But before I introduce the guest who we have joining us, I just want to talk about what the topic is. Today, we're asking, who is my sister's keeper? In terms of in South Africa, we've got quite a high rate of these high school for girls that are coming out in recent years, and you could arguably say recent years. Some people will say this is something that's been happening since the 2000s, where a lot of black girls, people of color, are coming out and speaking about the racism that they're experiencing in these schools. Punta, you're someone who was in Pretoria. You went to Pro Arte. Are there people that you knew from Pretoria Girls High that you were friends with that spoke about these things?
At the time when the Pretoria Girls High thing was happening, I remember my friend's younger sister was in Girls High in the same grade with everyone else who had the problem with everything. So she was saying she actually had short hair the whole time because she didn't want to be like, oh, am I on the right side of the rules or what? So she just kept it like, either a brush cut or whatever short hair, but she never outgrew her hair. But she said around that time it was really like they had had enough. But like, she was just quiet. Like, when you're just in grade 8 and you're just like,
Yeah,
I'll just follow the
yeah. You
rules or
just keep
whatever.
my head
Yeah, I'm just gonna
down.
keep my head down. Let me just finish school and get out of this institution. And then obviously there were other students who felt like, no, we can't just leave these institutions with these rules because history is gonna repeat itself. So that's what Tumi was going through at the time. Go Girls High.
Jeez. I mean,
Yeah.
well, we're going to get into the whole Girls High incident and
Mm.
Zuleika Patel. But before we get into that, so I'd like to introduce our guest. We've got Tulani, aka Thuli Ndzotyana, with us right now. Now, Tulani is a 23-year-old pioneer who prides herself in her involvement in youth empowerment. She's the initiator of Helping Hands Initiative, which seeks to alleviate poverty through collecting and distributing food parcels in Gauteng and Port Elizabeth. In 2018, she became the youngest ever crowned Miss Mamelodi Sundowns and the first
Mm.
title holder from the Eastern Cape. In 2018, she also partnered with Puma, who sponsored her Kicks with Goals initiative, which aims to motivate disadvantaged scholars to continue to make strides towards their goals. Speaking of strides, she also has a company called the Stride Institute where she trains women and young girls in modeling competition. Is that right, Tuli?
Yes, it's right. Oh, what an intro.
Yeah, I
Hello.
love
You know it's an intro when you have Punta busy going,
it. I was like, can I take classes? No, I love it.
So Tuli, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here and having this discussion with us today.
Thank you for having me here. I think this is such an important discussion to have, and you've actually triggered something when you posed
Mm.
who is my sister's keeper. And I think that
Hmm.
is such a powerful topic that we need to be having more in South Africa, but also need to, bringing the solutions for. So thank you for that.
Mm.
Well, yeah, we're hoping that this platform is just going to get more people talking and
Mm.
hopefully solutions are definitely going to come out. Now, in terms of a history, we're just going to go back into it. Around 1990, this happened where a lot of schools that were previously white run Afrikaner schools started integrating black students and students of color into their schooling system. And this was happening at the dawn of the democracy when Dada was being released from prison, and I think the white people were just like honestly shook and they were just like, you know what, if we're going to survive in this new South Africa, we need to adapt. And that means we need to take the people in, you know?
Mm.
And that's when there's all these stories of black kids being taken from the township and they moved into Model C schools little by little. And it starts very small. They take in a small number, and over time, the school becomes an integrated schools. And this is what happened with many of the schools. And many of them would even then change their names. Some of them would perhaps switch to from saying word school to just high schools, you know? And now, post democracy, what you find is that those that kept the Hoër schools, that kept it in their names, are signifiers of schools that are run with Afrikaans values and very Afrikaner way of life and interpretation of what's going on around them, and with that strong Christian background. And I mean, geez, I'm such a bad presenter. I invited Tuli here and I didn't even let you know ukuthi Tuli uzobasiza ngani. Utuli is someone who went she went to collegiate high school. And she's gonna just share with us her experience of being in a school like this, where it's a school that is built off of Afrikaans values. Some of them, the most extreme versions of them, keep Afrikaans as the medium of instruction, whilst others do use English, but the Afrikaans values of life,
Mm.
still ring very true and strong in that school. Tuli, when you were at collegiate, was that something that you experienced the school before you went to collegiate? Was it a school that had, was it a mixed school, or was it a school that did have these strong values? And getting into collegiate, was it easy to find yourself in that system?
Sheesh. So I think, as a young girl, I went to a girls' primary school. I went to Erica Girls. So obviously, when you've kind of grown up in a system and a schooling system where you have, girls around you and you guys are looking at high schools, I think a lot of us, who were scared to go to co ed and were very much open minded. And the older school, or the sister school, inverted commas, that you then start looking at and start following is collegiate. And I mean, collegiate is one of those
Mm,
schools that dominates in sport. You know that they basically have a matric 100% pass rate and
yeah.
all these opportunities.
These schools always have good numbers. That's another
Yes.
thing, is that they always have these good
So even
numbers.
like your parents, can
100%.
look from, the outside, this is something that you want to accomplish as a young person. And also
Mm,
it's guaranteed that even though I knew I was coming from a very good school as well, in junior school, it wasn't guaranteed that they would accept us at collegiate. So already
Mm.
just the perception you have of the school and it being such an accomplishment to go into is something that is so huge. And once you're in there, it took me 6 months. So I was only at collegiate for 6 months and I
hectic.
left. I changed
Oh,
high schools in
wow.
grade 8. I was very unhappy. Unlike what you've described, it's very similar, but I think collegiate was very English. So even like the houses,
Mm.
like what is it called when you belong to a house
Yes, when
and you guys compete
yes,
for
yes.
sports? It was Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria. Those are the houses.
Ha.
Hectic.
I promise you. So I was in Queen Elizabeth, and they have five of them, Queen Mary, all of it. So it was a very English, it's like when you're watching a movie from on Netflix and it's
The crown.
Yes, the crown. Yes, the crown, Wild Child. So when she's sent to it's a very English vibe, you know, that is indoctrinated when you get to the school, even just how initiation and everything is done. And I think for me, I started realizing already in grade 8, in my initiation week, that this wasn't a place where we could all thrive. You look at the prefects, and there were like
Mm,
two black girls and the prefects that were initiating you guys as a bunch in grade 8. You guys have a camp, but it's like, why are there only two black faces here to introduce us to this system
yeah.
when there aren't
Mm.
two black girls in the entire grade? So it's the things like that that you then realize from the beginning that, you know what, this place is an institution that is designed for a few individuals of color to thrive. And that was just the energy I got from the very beginning.
Mm.
Yeah. I think what's quite interesting is just the geographical aspect. So Collegiate is in Port Elizabeth,
Yes.
and with a Pretoria Girls High, like the name suggests, it's in Pretoria, and therefore I think you still have those colonialist sort of powers. If you're in PE, it's like the English, like you're saying. So you've got your
Mhm.
Queen Marys and your King this and all of that. Whereas what we found in inland, well, what I saw quite a lot in inland and being in Gauteng,
Mhm.
was that you had your lot of your horror schools where there
Yeah.
is that stronger Afrikaans sense. And I mean, what's quite dominant with these schools is that yes, they separate sexes, and you were saying like going to a co-ed school is quite nerve-wracking.
Mm,
I mean, in the male schools, you find that there's a lot of sexual allegation things going on
mm,
in that space, and I mean the racism is there. But what we read about in the papers quite a lot
mm,
is the water polo teacher touching too many of the boys, you know.
mm,
And then with the girls' schools, it's always the incidents of racism that we hear a lot more about than the sexual misconduct with the teachers and everything like that. It's always in those spaces that the media is always putting this up. And we saw this in 2016
mm,
with Zuleika Patel. You know, she was at Pretoria Girls High, and she was told that her hair was distracting. And by the time it blew up in the media, that was like after countless of meetings between the school and her parents and back and forth. And the school was actually quite insistent that she was doing that to her hair on purpose, you know, and they wanted her to flatten her hair and relax her hair and all of those things.
mm,
And she's quoted as saying, asking me to change my hair is like asking me to erase my blackness.
mm.
Tuli, in 2016, when all of this was happening, what was going on in your mind when all of that was happening, you know?
You know what? I think when that happened for me, it was like finally the attention that happens in these schools that has us moving. Because even when I was in grade 8, my mom threatened to go to the Herald. And it was a whole thing of, I'm not going to find another school if I go public with this. And I'm trying to leave collegiate. So often enough, we
Mm,
end up not having stories out there in the media. Not every story of discrimination and the
Oh.
things that are happening in our
mm.
institutions end up making it. And when I was in 2016, I was actually in matric. And when that whole hair thing blew up for Uzuleka, it was so ironic that I was in the same situation at a different school in terms of my braids. So we were in
Oh,
our
really?
matric year, yes, and I had decided to dye my dreadlocks brown. And this was an issue for the school because it's not my natural color. And I remember saying, but you know what? A lot of the Caucasian girls go red, go
Exactly.
blonde, go a different color, and I'm choosing to go brown. And if you look at my hair now, this is the hair that I had back in school, so it's not like it was a distraction. I just felt like this is the hair color that I want to have. But I was
Mm.
like, someone else, like, I'm making up a fake name, a Michaela, goes to school and decides to go red or go dark tomorrow, become a brunette. It's not an issue. But for me, I was called into the principal's office. Even my braids would be the same color, and that was an issue. And I remember the school dropped it when the whole Zuleika incident happened in Pretoria.
Oh,
I think
really?
they
Mm.
was because I was already pushing back, saying, but when someone else dyes their hair red or a different color that's not their natural color, because they're Caucasian, you accept it. And I have dreadlocks and I choose to dye them brown, and I think they look good. It's not distracting to the school uniform, it's not highlights or anything. But then now this is an issue. So, how do these policies work? Are we then going to say everyone needs to keep their natural color? So, around that entire incident, I remember my mom laughing, saying, I think your teachers are so scared of you at school. And the reason they dropped this because it was
Exactly.
is because they were scared to get exposed. And I was always that person
uh,
fought till I left school. I think when I left after 40 days and, when we wrote our finals, the teachers were happy because I would even wear an ANC t-shirt on Civi's Day. And I
Yes.
promise you, for 40 days, I wore a t-shirt called Daughter of Biko, an SACP hat, and I was very intentional. I was always trying to speak to the system because so many things had happened. And I honestly believe that it was such a system cultivated to segregate us as the Black students within the system because we find ourselves
mm.
fighting among each other, for these little spotlights,
Mm,
for these low positions that are
mm,
only
mm,
implemented for a handful of us. So when you actually ask the question, am I my sister's keeper? It triggered me to a point that I felt like, why weren't enough of us fighting together? It's only after matric and after
mm,
they decide on prefects and head students that you realize that actually this system is toxic and we've been fighting against each other trying to thrive in it instead of working progressively to dismantle it. And also our
yeah.
parents are scared. My mom always used to tell
Yes.
me, dude, you want to get into university, you don't want to get kicked out of the school. You've already left collegiate to kind of fight this racism, and now you're in a new system. Let's just finish the year. You can always be doing these things at a later stage. But I think eventually she realized that I was strong enough academically and strong enough as an individual that I wasn't
Mm.
naughty. I never got in trouble. I never went to detention my whole life, but I was not going to
Yeah.
sit in a system and be comfortable. with what
Yeah,
they
and
were
just do
doing.
as you're being told.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now, what were things like? Interest has always just been like the parents' evenings and stuff like that.
Exactly,
Because
or the SGB. Who are the people there?
yes,
Are they not speaking for the students?
You know what? I think the RCL is what how we called it. I think how it's elected as students. It's always for
mm,
me, and I can say this now, and I really don't, hold back when I say this. I feel like a lot of the students who'll be representatives there as well are teachers' pets. It's someone,
Oh
the
yeah.
student trusts, someone who
yeah.
has a different
It's
image of
it's
that.
the palatable black,
Yes. And
the one who's not too radical, you
exactly.
know?
Exactly. And then also with our parents, it's like how much time do parents have to serve on these boards? Not all parents even go to sports
Yeah.
days and sports evenings. And it's not that they don't want to, it's because of the kind of work that
Mm,
they're doing. You know,
Yeah.
also sometimes where the schools are situated. Half, not half the students, but when you look at the black community students, how many of them get dropped off every day?
In
So
exactly.
the
it's
morning, yeah.
Exactly.
it's not that the parents are not involved, but they're not always free. They can't come and watch hockey practice, for instance.
Mm.
Like other parents could do that. And I think it's that culture where you'll find that, there's kind of a parent group, and I would say in the Caucasian group that's very involved, donates, does all these things. And,
Yes.
our parents, when I look at it, didn't have the means to do that, but we have the skills to play in those sports teams. So I think it's
Mm,
just a matter of also understanding, the backgrounds that we're coming from, that something like serving on a school board is not something that keeps our parents up at night. They're trying to do so much for us to provide for
Already,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
them. So I think that plays a huge role in that.
And I think those are some of the tools that systems like these benefit from,
Yeah, exactly.
just you speaking about the distance in terms of how far the school is. Our parents don't have these cars. They already travel 3 hours to get to
To
work.
work.
Travel 2.5, 3 hours to come back from work. And now there's an SGP meeting. I mean, the parents' evenings were once a quarter, but that already felt so strenuous
Mhm.
on my single mom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now imagine wanting her to go to SGP, and back then it wasn't things Zaboma Zoom, Naboma Skype, where you could join a
Exactly.
meeting,
Uh,
where you could join a meeting from home. And so I think these systems tend to then just benefit from structures like that. Like,
Mm.
okay, we've got the black bodies for the count, we've got them in to say we're transforming, but in terms of how are we making sure that they are accommodated in the space, but also even if they are not accommodated, who's going to speak up, because they're not going to speak up for themselves, and if they do, it's just schoolgirls, and it's just going to end here. Once she goes to grade 12 and she passes grade 12, that's it. The parents are not going to show up, the parents are not going to do anything.
Mm.
It's fine. And I think these schools got somewhat comfortable, and when the 2016 sort of thing happened, then I think that was a reigniting across everywhere to remind each other that, you know what, we need to get up and we need to stand up and be the voices for these children, because these places and these systems make sure that they've got things in place. I mean, I want to speak about the microaggressions that you felt in such a space. Punsa, I'm sure you're quite familiar with the this is not a Shabin, this is keep it down, this is not a
yes.
Shabin. Those sort of
Yes.
lines.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know I remember that as well. But it was weird that I went to a art school inverted commas because they also had the same things like actually saying with the hair. I remember I used to have what's this red, not red hair, it's maroon with like highlights, like it's like, but it's like it wasn't
Yes.
like far off from our uniform. And then they used to come again and tell us, oh no, because when are your, I mean, basically, you're black and this is not your natural hair color. And then I'll be like, no,
Mm.
but so and so in the drama class is the same color,
Imagine.
the same highlights. It looks nice on me, it looks nice on her. Then I won't change it or whatever. But I'm just
Mm.
like wondering, like, how are we supposed to change it? For instance, like Tuli saying her mom said, like now we're worried about just having us as black people move to the next level, getting into the best university, having your child thrive. Like we don't have time or the resources for us to feel like, I feel like for me, there wouldn't be resources or things to say, yeah, if they kick you out of the school, we're taking you to the next school to go fight this issue, to keep fighting it. We're
Yeah.
just like as black people
Yeah.
always like, Ish, I know it's difficult, it's uncomfortable, but let's just move to the let's
Let's just
just bear with
begazela.
it.
Let's just
Let's make it. That's
begazela.
all we do. Like I can't see how mean, obviously, yes, we could have started a group. What's this? A club at school, maybe, if we wanted to fight against such issues. But like we were saying now,
Yeah,
usually the prefect or your RCL or those people were also teachers' pets. They were like, oh yeah, guys, sorry, I don't want to ruin my credit for university or
Mm.
my letter for school. So I mean, because I want to go to UP or VIT, so I don't want them to think that, oh yes, I was rebellious. So it feels like, yes, we want to fight against these things, but then there's also that ish. I kind of have this like one chance. Like imagine, remember with the
yeah,
fees must
yeah,
fall.
yeah.
There were people who were I mean, we all had this issue, yeah, 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 fees and everything. But then there were people who were feeling like they could be
Unheard.
leaders. People are still paying for
Mm.
those repercussions now, and some of us were like, okay, yeah, we'll support and whatever, but like scared to kind of be the voice that says this is wrong, or I don't know if I'm making
Yes.
sense.
No, I completely agree. I completely agree with you. And I think it really is important to get to a point where, as a student, you really understand the power that you have. So I think the one thing that I realized
Mm.
when I got to matric is, firstly, your APS points do all the speaking. You know,
Mm.
we didn't really get help from the school in terms of, it's not like when you were in grade 7, the application forms come to your school, all these things are just made so easy for you. Your teachers
Yeah,
are there, you kind of guided into grade 8. But when you are actually in matric, it's all about your APS points. So when you apply to institutions, you sometimes don't even need a letter from the school, as long as your grade 11 results and matric results are certified, etc. And it's the documentation that you need. I think that's the first thing that we need to realize. And then on
yeah.
top of that, also, when you voice out, it doesn't mean that you're breaking the rules. So I think this is something that I started doing. I started telling my mom that I've still never
Mm.
been in trouble. I've never gotten detention. Even when I talk to teachers about these issues, I'm not disrespectful. I'm just asking things that provoke them or perhaps make them uncomfortable. But for me, this is my
Yes,
reality. And I think for me, I was
yes,
fortunate to have a parent who then was like, okay, I hear you. You can go ahead and, fight the system, the way that you believe is going to work. Clearly,
yeah.
you've given us.
Mm.
And then for me, I was very fortunate in that we formed a little group. So I had three guys in my history class, and I had my best friend who was actually a head student at school. And we did things that we've still not spoken about that would shake the system. We would leave, little notes. We would, yeah, we did quite a bit. But basically, doing all of that, we were sending a message to the system, and we were
Yes.
thought provocative questions during guidance and during life orientation. And for me, those were the spaces in which you could question, because they were always about how can the school be improved, or how can we make
How can we
certain things better.
transform the
And I
school?
used those to
Mm.
talk about things that were an issue to me. So
Mm.
I carried on. By the end of the year, my braids, my thick block braids that were brown were not an issue. My highlighted hair was no longer an issue. I'm sure the school was like, I hope we never get another Tulani, but they knew that they couldn't challenge me because they couldn't even
Mm.
say in their code of conduct where I was going wrong. And most importantly, how is it fair for this race and not fair for another? And in closing, because we are a minority, as the Black students in these multiracial schools in most cases, we need to form clubs, that unite us,
Yeah.
where we don't seek to compete. So I felt like, because everyone either wants to be a prefect or wants to walk away with honors and all these things that are made to seem like we need to bend our back to get them, we started being divided. It was not nice to have more Black girls doing similar stuff, or that's the culture, or
Mm.
that's what it felt like. And I always disliked that, because for me, like my best friend and I, who we still close till this day, we were into similar things. We compete in public speaking,
Yeah.
debating, drama, you name it. But that brought us closer, because we were the
Yeah.
two or three faces in that space, and we weren't going to not be each other's pillars and support each other. But how is that
Yeah.
Mm.
built? And I think that needs to be dismantled from our parents, because obviously, if we're coming into these white spaces, inverted commas, they are designed to make Savannah thrive, Kayla thrive. That's what they
Mm.
used to.
Mm.
So we mustn't make it a glorify Tulani thriving in that system. There should be more us
Exactly.
thriving in that system, because if you're good at something, you should be undeniable, and it should be something that you're acknowledged for, not because you're the black girl who's good at it. And it's things like that that need to
Yes.
kind of end in these schools. And the black girls going into it knowing that we're going into this and we shouldn't fight to become prefect, but whoever deserves it amongst us will get it.
We'll get
Just trying
it.
to break that competitive spirit of saying, let's be competitive, but let it be healthy. Because let's look at our white counterparts.
Hmm.
Why is it that they're all happy and will all push for each other to become prefects? In the
Hmm.
hockey team or first team, why do they support each other so much, and why can't we? So as much as
Mm.
Hmm.
we blame, we also need to step away and ask ourselves, why is it that we in this black community are not fighting louder together? Because if we do that, then we'll definitely be heard.
And for me, it speaks
100%.
to the techniques and the strategies that these institutions and these systems would use.
Mm,
That or when you walk in, like you said, in grade 8 already, just already at prefect at that camp, that orientation camp, you're just seeing two black girls. That sends a message that only one of you can make it. We can only have one good black tennis player. We can only have one
mm,
good black hockey player. And it's either you're that or you find something else to go be the good person at. Whereas with them, they can have their friends and all of them, and they can, like you're saying, root for each other. But
yes.
these are sort of the techniques. I've heard of schools in Limpopo that were even when it comes to SGBs and parents joining the SGB and standing up for their children and being their children's keepers, they'd get there in the SGB meeting. The whole meeting is in Afrikaans, and then they don't have a leg to stand on, and they're trying to fight their way out of that, but they don't even know where to fight their way. And like we said, our parents have so much that they're fighting for, but
Mm,
there's also the traumas of apartheid as well,
mm,
when they're thinking to themselves, I thought we're past this, and now they get into a space where it's all of that, and they don't know what must abo ANC smile laphayana, we've got a black president. Who am I going to go to say to
mm,
these people, no, speaking in Afrikaans for a whole SGP
Mm.
meeting doesn't make sense.
mm,
It's not fair to me as a black parent who is here.
mm,
And there's that fear of, what, I can't stand up, I can't speak up, and a lot of the parents, they were saying that eventually they stop being a part of the SGB because of these tactics that are getting used against them, these tactics to other you, these tactics to make you fight amongst each other than to fight at what is actually going
mm,
on over here that we can see.
mm. And that is true.
What's interesting with the Cornwall Hill College. So one of the girls spoke up there against the racism that they were facing. She says that one of the teachers told her that your hair is unpresentable, it is messy, and it is not the Cornwall way. And so someone on Twitter was saying here, at Muriel Makulana says the story of Cornwall Hill College is similar to what happened at Curio, Pretoria Girls High, St. Mary's, and other schools. Removing kids is not a solution. Blacks
Mm.
must fight, or racists will dictate that we must live at townships to avoid racism.
Mm,
Now, for me, that one is a double edged sword, And Tuli, I want to throw this one at you. Did you feel as though you leaving within your first 6 months there, y- you were a betrayer in some sort of a sense? You're complicit to what is going on, or do you also believe, because the other side of that is that we can't burden girls who are going into high school with the task of changing a whole system like that.
You know what? I truly believe that in that 6 months, I left a mark. In that,
Mm,
firstly, our classroom structure changed. So we used to have two assemblies on a Monday and on a Friday. On a Friday,
yes.
after I had these few incidents that were happening, and I reported them, and my parent came in, spoke to the principal who was new, actually coming from Pretoria Girls, our new principal in grade 8.
Oh.
Mm.
Yes. So we then would not go to assembly on a Friday. Our class would sit and discuss these issues, and we'd find ways to work against these microaggressions that my five other classmates, because there were 30 of us in a class, and four of us were black, one of us was a colored girl. So the five of us felt excluded in many of the tasks, and so many incidents that happened during hospitality, during our EMS teachings, like, and there was just a lot of segregation in terms of how we sat. And even when you'd put up your hand, certain teachers wouldn't answer you. And all these things were like happening that we were all noting and frustrated by. And when,
Yeah.
I reported it to my parent, I was like, firstly, this is what is happening and I'm not happy. And she came in, and then, there was another parent as well who also stepped in and said, my child is also in the same class and is not happy. And these are the issues. We then, the five of us went, we spoke to the principal about what was happening, and we were seen as the class with the racial issue. Meanwhile, there
Huh.
were other black
Hectic.
girls in the grade who were going through similar experiences, but just that already triggered the talk. And I was like, for a school to change, a school as collected and in its system as collegiate, to decide that on a Friday, we're going to sit out assembly to try and end this, or bring about a solution to this, for me was something that had never been done and was a good start. But
Mm.
also
Mm.
tiring, because also you now become labeled. So we became the five girls that were labeled, to a point where it was,
Oh.
because what
Mm-hmm.
happened is you would keep the same class in grade 8 and 9, and then once you chose your subject, you'd move. So there already talks about, perhaps, our class needs to be reshuffled, perhaps the issues with this class. And for me, that didn't solve the problem that was happening at the school. And there's only so much. In grade 8, you've
Yes.
just got into the school, you're still in the
Yeah.
initiation phases. So there's only so
Mm.
much even your own parent can do. So I felt like already, like, I mentioned to you guys earlier on that not all parents could go and watch hockey practices. Mine did, because I was in
Mm.
the under 14A squad and I wasn't being passed the ball. And the only other person who I would then pass the ball against and we do warm up drills was a goalkeeper who was also black, and we had gone to the same primary school. And this didn't make sense to me because goalkeepers would train together, but that's how uncomfortable the other girls were around this girl who,
Imagine.
is seeing things apparently in terms of the racism that is in this place. So
Yeah.
it was in the little things like that. And for me, it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I am a 14-year-old with so much ambition who wants to get involved in school. And actually, I'm so discouraged here. You know what? The Xhosa teacher, I
Mm.
remember, she called us, and asked the black girls who were in my grade. And we had a chat with her, and she was like, you know what you guys did is so brave, because a lot of these girls have given up on some of the things that they wanted to do because they're not given this opportunity. And the fact that you're
Yeah.
fighting is good. And I hope that you guys stay united in this. But there's only so much you can do. So now it's like you're gonna end up
Exactly.
getting to a point where you don't like the thing. So I wanted to quit hockey. And my mother was like, you're not going to quit hockey. You've played it since you were young and you enjoy it. And the only reason you want to quit it is because people don't want to pass you this ball. And that's what they want you to do. So it was all these little
Yes.
things that you had to then realize that, firstly, this is the system, this is the culture. And now the things that you love to do, you're beginning to hate, and you're only 14. So
Yeah.
that's when, for me, I was just like, I want to get a fresh start. I fought this, and there's letters that have been exchanged. My parent has come in enough, and there's only so much that can be done. These old women who are teaching the school still don't see that they're wrong. And I don't want to be the person who's walking around, for lack of
At
a better word,
14.
scarlet letter
Yeah.
14 and has this burden over her. I want to still be able to do the things that I love. And I'm so fortunate to say that even when I walked out of matric, and even though going to a different school didn't mean there wasn't racism, I went to a co-ed
Yes.
school and there was still a lot of racism and there was still so many experiences. But I think as I grew older, like I said, by the time I had got to matric, I knew how to fight within the system, and I still thrived. I was very good at a lot of things in school, and the things that I was good at, I thrived at, despite whether or not, like, my public speaking and head of debating, teacher didn't like
Yeah.
me, but she knew that I was good at that, and there was nothing to
Yeah.
do. And I think going to a school like collegiate made me realize that if you're good at something, fight for it. And even the people who train you or are meant to be training you might not be for you, but if it's God given and it's for you, don't give up.
Mm.
It gave me that mentality of knowing that no system owed me anything. You know, I needed to
Mm.
just do what I felt was good for me and the things that I felt were calling to me. And I would hope, that to the people who are listening to this and are either in school or outside of school, that is something they take, because, quite frankly, the system doesn't end with school. There's varsity, there's the workspace.
In
So if you
life. Yeah.
so if you don't learn to fight it in your way, and hopefully your way will then become a united way that we fight as African people, then yeah, that. You
Yeah.
got to learn to have
Yeah.
that fighting
Mm.
spirit.
For me, you see, that's the thing that's also disturbing about that fighting spirits is that then it feels like at such a young age, you are being trained to have that angry black woman narrative coming out already, you know?
Mhm.
By the time you're 18, it's something that you have, because you've been speaking up and speaking up and speaking up, it feels and becomes as though it looks as it comes across as though it's innate, whereas it's systems like these that are boxing in a sense like that, you know?
Very true, but also we need to ask ourselves, why do we allow these labels to define us? So for me,
Mm,
like, I will never identify as a black angry woman, but you can call me a black opinionated woman who's going to shape shift and be a part of the change she wants to see in South Africa. So I think it's also how we choose to see it. We mustn't see ourselves as victim to the system. Our ancestors, our grandparents, our parents have fought for this democracy. It's up to us to hold it accountable, because I was having a
yes.
conversation with one of my cousins, and we spoke about how democracy, the policies, they are like a plaster to the wound. We still need to
Mm.
heal, and for proper healing to happen, we need to unpack what is happening and dismantle, not just say, okay, it's no longer a former Model C school, anyone is welcome, because let's be honest, these schools still segregate us. The first people who get accepted
Mm,
in grade 8 are people who belong to that area code. And then next up on the
yes.
line are other kids who've gone to multiracial schools that are seen, as the more
As sister
pure, the
schools.
sister schools, or the more pure, even in terms of race identification. I can list
Mm,
names of schools in Port Elizabeth that, are multiracial schools, but because they're black dominated, those students won't get into a school like collegiate. Maybe one of them does in primary school. And why is that? So it's the
mhm.
things like that that we need to realize, that these schools are still selecting their pool of students. They are still very much in control,
Yeah.
not the policies. And if that is the case, and this is what is still happening, that's not what is going to change the system. But also, I know that our parents, they get triggered, they are tired, they have fought. So we need to
Mm,
pick up the baton and
mm,
find out, how can we bring
mm.
about change? What else needs to be done? How can you fight the system? And also, what policies are there to protect us? No one ever knows
Mm,
until you are questioning. Like, I was never given a hair code of conduct, but that's the first thing they'll bring up when you are in those situations, until you actually ask to read it. And I never got it. And I think it was through realizing that, what, this system is controlled by the people who teach. They've
yes.
always had a rule. They prefer girls with stockings, or girls who have relaxed hair and it's
Mm,
all tied back. So when things, like an afro come and it makes them uncomfortable, they find a way to normalize it, until we're only much older to be like, what? I allowed that to
no.
happen. So I think we need to question these
Mm.
policies and understand these policies as scholars and people who have left these schools, and hold them accountable.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think, yeah, like for me, the question is, who like I love what you're saying about what you call this democracy is being, it's up to us to hold democracy accountable. So wherever we see an issue of non-democracy taking place, we need to call it out and go, that's not what you promised,
Mm,
and we need to put it on blast and make sure that what justice is deserved there is actually served.
mm,
But I also then wonder to myself, and it's not a rhetorical question. I know after the girls would you rely on yourself, and
mm,
through relying on yourself, you then form an alliance of solidarity with other girls who are going through what you're going through at that school.
mm,
Then ideally your parents get behind you, and they create that wall that approaches senior management in the school, which is the governing body, and the principal, and says, my daughter's feeling this, my child is feeling this needs to change. Thereafter, you would ideally like to believe that the Department of Education is behind this.
mm,
But it seems like Obanyaza Lesufi and his people, or just the general department, is very reactionary to what's going on, in terms of, oh, there's a flame there, let's go put it out.
mm,
We condemn. Oh, there's another school that's happening there, let's go put out that flame. We condemn.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's like saying, hey guys, there's a pattern here.
mm.
Maybe we need to figure out what is the common denominator at the root of this pattern and deal with it from that source.
I
And
agree.
so in my next question is, without, if we're going to take government out of it, who else should be my sister's keeper? We've got my sister and her friends, we've got my sister and her parents. Who else in there needs to be my sister's keeper in these spaces?
I think the people who need to be my sister's keepers in those spaces are our black teachers. Why is it that
Mm,
in a former Model C school, the only other black teacher will either be there to teach LO or Isxhosa or that vernacular language? Our teachers
yeah,
are skilled. Firstly, I think the system needs to change. The system never changed. The teachers who are at Collegiate and Gray and all these amazing schools that are still, keeping us indoctrinated and a system that we are still fighting is because they probably went to those schools and now they go back to teach there and the system never ends. How many black teacher, how many colored teacher, Indian teachers do we have across South Africa? But why is it that even though we're in a democracy, that if you go to a township, uzawufumana otishara no tisharakazi who are black, the
yeah,
principal will be black and everything about that school will just be black people.
it's black.
And I'm not anti that at all. All I'm saying is that it's still sending a message that multiracial schools belong to white people. If teachers can teach
Yes,
maths at the township and teach maths at northern area schools, why do we not have black maths teachers in the schools that we go to in the suburbs? So that is an issue that
yeah,
I think would help this issue because often it's just now students and a teacher who's also a
yeah,
puppet to the system who's perhaps teaching it's
yes.
across
An integral role in the
exactly.
system.
And it's like, how are you going to bring about all these change when all these people who sit in the staff room don't think there's anything wrong with them? They think they're
Yeah,
not racist and they can acknowledge that Tulani is a well spoken student who debates and plays sport and is academic. But that is not the issue. If you have
mm,
never been exposed outside to what you've become accustomed to, it's so easy for you to think you're not racist or you're not what is another word, because perhaps racism is something that people run away from, but you're not exposed enough to know
problematic.
that you're not ex- what am I trying to say, you're not exposed to blackness to know that you
Mm,
actually are part of the problem, because then when you see
yes,
people acting in a way, it intimidates you. You think it's provoking,
especially when it's different from
when it's
yours
different from
in
yours
the
because
slightest of
it's,
way.
it's it's exactly what you're not accustomed to, and that's the problem. If South Africa is such a democracy, why don't the teachings and our teachers represent that when we look at schools? And it's like
Mm,
still maintaining that white is better. So, for instance, a school like Collegiate that
yes,
will have only 15 or 20 black students out of 150 in a grade, and mostly white teachers producing 100% pass rate makes, it's still
yeah,
getting a message there that take
yeah,
your child to this school because it's better. She's going to get 100% pass rate. She's guaranteed to pass matric. Meanwhile, every year we are trying to celebrate little strides in our townships because they don't have the same, facilities.
exactly.
And it's like, how is
How,
going
yeah,
to grow?
yeah,
Like, this is something that I'm still trying to implement and I hope to be a part of. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me why our township schools and our northern area schools don't have clubs like debating or book clubs and stuff like that. The
yes,
facility is already there. We're not asking you for uniforms and stuff that are expensive, but these are schools
mm,
that are going to encourage these students to be very vocal and to be very opinionated, but to also feel a part of something. But our schools don't have this. If they have a soccer and a
mm,
netball team at most, this is celebrated. But why is this? Why is it that these former Model C schools offer so much and we can't do this, for township and northern area schools? So for me, it's the whole education system that I believe needs to be dismantled in terms of where are teachers placed? How are they getting these positions? We need to see white teachers in township schools. We need to see
Elokshin,
colored
yeah,
teachers schools. And it needs to be it needs to be a representation of South Africa and what the Rainbow Nation was meant to be, but it's still not. It's still for the privileged. Model C school, former Model C schools are still for the privileged. And in closing, our parents, when they also take us to these schools, they can feel sometimes submissive to them a little bit because in a way, it's an accomplishment to take your child to a former Hoer school or an all girls school
mm,
that operates private school, even though it's a public school. And I think, when these things no longer feel like accomplishments, the kind of school that you're taking your black child to, but in actual fact, we can go to any school and any of the schools that we get will give us this quality, then things like this current system that we live in will begin to be dismantled. And that's the thing. These schools are built on that. And it's like, how are you ever going to understand a different culture, a different perspective if you know absolutely nothing about it? And it will take the government because, I mean, the education system plays a huge part in placing of teachers. Just like, when there's crisis and children can't get into school, they become a part on placing of school.
A
So it's how
solution.
that is done. It mustn't be guaranteed that Michaela, who lives in Mill Park, can go and study at collegiate. They need to set that
Yes.
system up in terms of how they teach students,
Yes.
in terms of the teachers that teach there. Because my thing is, we have so many teachers in South Africa who teach. So why is it that the schools still don't represent this? Why is it that township schools are still for black people and northern area schools are still
Mm.
for colored people? And if you go to an Indian area, those schools feel like they're for Indian students. That's not
Yes.
democracy, you know? So that's what needs to be changed, and the government can play a part in that. They keep screwing up when there's a breakout or a news article, but what are they going to do when they leave those very white teachers there with those 15 or 30 black students? It does not change the system, and there's only so much kids can do. And I think we own it upon ourselves as the students who've been through the system to take this battle as our own and not expect a 14-year-old girl who just got to grade 8 to understand and to be wired to fight, So we
Exactly.
understand them and we see where it needs to be changed. So how are we as this generation that is so loud and can get things trending and can get things noticed and across this nation, how are we so quiet? Why are we not involved? And I know that when I was done with school, I was like, yo, this place is going to see me at my 10-year reunion and I'm going to shake it up. But I never coming kind of thing. And once we're done, we also want to be done because we felt that burden. But actually, we need to come together, come with solutions, have these
Mm.
conversations,
Mm.
put them out to the government, make the government uncomfortable, protest at these
Create those
and
safe
and and,
spaces.
and just be there and do it all lawfully, but also be the generation that we currently are known for being, which is unapologetic and vocal. So we need to be doing
At Ngule Koko says, it's sad that our pursuit of excellence will always have us in white spaces where we are not wanted and are consistently reminded of that
that.
fact. Our own schools do not measure up to these standards because of funding. Teachers don't care. We don't care. Corruption.
Mm,
And I think this takes me back to what you were saying, Tuli, in terms of um, our this the 100% pass rate being a barometer of success.
mm,
I mean, the schools in Malokshini, the children there are already facing so
a lot.
much just to make sure that they are actually passing in a test, let alone I'm a metric receiving 100% pass rate for everyone. People are struggling to pay their school fees to make sure that they're even there in the class. People are sitting there and they are hungry in those schools. So of course, when people are being dropped off literally at the gate with lunch boxes or 100 rand notes for lunch, 100% pass rate iyakhonakala. It becomes a lot
Reality.
easier
What to
because
do.
people's focus can switch to ensuring that it's just their books. We have so many childhood.
Mm,
Yes, we have so many.
mm,
Exactly. We've got, which is my next point, Punza, is that in Malokshini, you've got so many child-headed
mm,
households where children get home and they are literally the parents. But like school is a work shift. They get home and they are the ones cooking. They're the ones taking care of everyone in the home and making sure that the family is all right. Not enough time to focus on their books. And you are absolutely right in saying that the playing field is not equal. Transformation only happened with the attrition of students in these schools. We only saw transformations in, okay, let's mix the children up, and okay, let's take a few black teachers and put them in the Model C schools so
mm,
that they can do the subjects that really don't weigh a lot when it comes to someone's I nearly said CV, someone's results at the end of the year, you know? And we really need to question that. The only reason I was leaving government out is because I really want us as individuals to sit down and ask ourselves, how can we be our sisters' keepers, you know? What else can we form apart from a government institution that could go around and do a quality assessment check on these schools that these girls can complain to, and a body that these girls, an ombudsman that these girls can go and say, listen, I'm not being taken, you know, a girl scout, but a black girl scout, a people of color girl scout. And once you enter what you call this, a previously Model C all white school, and you are part of a minority of people of color, especially girls, people of color, you can sign up to this space, and this is a space that allows you to express yourself in that sense, but also fights for you. When you send a complaint to your parent, you tell your parent, you tell your teachers, you tell the principal, you tell your parents, and you tell that body, that Girl Scouts ombudsman body, who will then come with the muscle power. They will come with the lawyers. They will come with the Mrs. Patrice Mutsipe money and be there and be like, listen, we're hearing that the ball is not being passed in hockey. What is going on? Let's watch footage. And it's not just your mom who's sitting there watching. It's that body as well. Someone else is there to be on your side and say, these are the steps we're gonna follow and this is what's next. And I really love the fact that you say that we should ask for these codes of conduct. We get there, and I mean, also when you're 13 years old, awazi nokuthi kune code of conduct yasesikolweni, you
Once
know,
you're in
your mom
trouble.
just dresses you and takes you to the school. Next thing you're told, your hair is not according to code of conduct. It's just like, what
Yeah.
the fuck is a code of conduct? And the word explains it itself, and you're just like, where is this?
Yeah.
I've never seen this before. So I guess also having that information at hand for ourselves, and also reading the fine print, just because it says what you call this hair must be neat and tidy and representable, does not mean it needs to be blonde and in a pony and stuff like that. An afro is neat and tiny and tidy and representable too. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes. No, certain.
And we need to question those fine lines and put a magnifying glass and say, where have I broken the rule here? Because because I'm very sure that their code of conducts do not say well, I've seen some with dreadlocks saying no dreadlocks, no dreadlocks, but in 2021, are you still going to have that in your code of conduct?
That's yeah. That is true, and it does need to be changed. Like the girls' school I went to, I had dreads up until grade 3, and then I cut them. Cutting my dreads was not um, because of what a school said. I just wanted to have relaxed hair, to do braids like my friends, and all of that stuff. But one of the reasons that we were excited when I moved to it is that I didn't have dreads anymore, because this would have been an issue for them. I would have needed to cut the dreads, and this doesn't make sense. How does my hair, prevent me from being a good student? Um, the yeah,
It's the distraction line that they love to
no,
use. It's a
but
distraction.
it's a distraction because it doesn't grow in the way and the manner in which these schools want it in. But
Exactly.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And you know what? I think,
Exactly.
to just add to what you said, I completely agree. I don't think the government needs to be left behind, but I'm also not going to, and we can't be shy of the fact that this has been happening since 2016. And what drastic changes or policy implementations have happened from government to try and prevent this? Not much. So
Mm.
these schools still
Nothing.
feel like they have the power. These principals,
Yeah.
the teachers that get into that school,
That's the
that
message it
yes,
sends.
it's still like, when I think about it, I'm like, a lot of these girls' schools aren't private schools. But why does it feel like they're so private owned with the way in which, the government and SGB and complaints can override and
Yes.
affect that process? But why is it that they still feel like they're very white owned? But also, I'm not saying that we just need to focus all our attention on these schools. We also need to focus on our attention on making our own schools in the townships great schools. And we can do this as people who are former
We
students.
can.
We're not in a generation where it's a rarity to be a lawyer or a doctor or an actuarial
Mm,
scientist.
mm,
We're an educated
mm.
generation. We, the generation that's gone to university and has done ample of stuff, and we're fighting issues like unemployment and stuff. Yes. Yes. So how are we, as now the students who've left these schools, going back to helping township schools and becoming the Girl Scouts that you're saying? Because I absolutely agree with that, B, that we need to become those people that form these bodies so that when my children go to school, I don't want to still go step in there and fight for the color of skin, you know? That is, for
Yes.
me, I would have failed as a parent. That is still
Yeah.
an issue because these things upset me, and I did my part and my parent did my part and the
Mm.
girls and the community I formed did my part, but we did our part and we left. And now we need to do our part and go back because we now realize, and especially for us, because let's be honest, we're not trying to discourage our black students to not want to be in positions of leadership and to get exposure and opportunities. And it's going to feel like that when all we are saying, and as the older generation, is that they need to fight and be united from grade 8. Now they feel like they're at war at school. And I mean, you are
Yeah.
spending 5 years of high school, 7 years in primary school. Shouldn't feel like war. It should feel like this is
Yeah.
where you're finding yourself, your talents, your gifts, and what it is that you want to do with your life. It should be an environment that cultivates that. So we need to be the people that make that system uncomfortable. The older generation, the people who've left school, who know the system, who struggled in the system, know the issues. And now we need to sit down and bring about solution, do podcasts, do live videos, find out these policies, and actually be accountable and make South Africa uncomfortable, because we can certainly do
Mm.
that, because there are so many of these schools across the nation that if we start this conversation and we make it stick, they're going to get uncomfortable and the government will realize that they need to intervene.
Yeah. Jeez, Thuli, I mean, thank you so much for being here. You're definitely the perfect person that we could have gotten to speak about this conversation. I just wanted to give you a shot to let people know where they can find you and where they can find the Stride Institute as well if they want to get into some sort of training for competitions and yeah, and yeah.
Thank you, B, and thank you as well for having me. I really enjoyed it. I can't believe, we've gone on this long. I'm going to, going forward, also just hold myself accountable to see who I am being a sister to by being their keeper. And,
Mm.
and how people can get a hold of me is on social media. It's Thuli Ndzotyana. And yeah, social media being Instagram. And then I think the easiest way to also find me is by typing Stride Institute and looking for us on Instagram, but also on Facebook, and popping us a DM or an email. And you know what? Stride Institute is something that I'm also going to use to be my sister's keeper. I believe it's something that I've already started doing,
Mm.
before
Mm.
COVID.
Yes.
I was going to schools, and particularly where I'm from in PE in Motherwell, a township that is highly faced by the drug issue. I was going back, teaching them public speaking, motivating them with my story, because I've also grown up with a single parent, grown up in the hood, grown up, with similar circumstances that they've had, and just empowering them
Yeah.
to let them know that that is not their final destination. So that is what
Yeah.
I'm going to use Stride for, to shape South Africa to what I want to see it for. And thank you for having me.
No, it's actually thank you so much for being here. And I think this conversation is definitely not one that is over. This conversation is one that needs action behind it. Punta, I am challenging you and I as well. You know, we can't just sit here and have this conversation. Yeah, we definitely will be accountable. Thank you so much again, Tuli. And let's get into a bit more of the show.
You're listening to The Rewind.